Hello and welcome back to another British English lesson. 皆さんこんにちは、アリです。British English のチャンネルへようこそ。Today is a Japanese special where we're going to be looking at some very useful everyday phrases used in Japan and understanding the equivalents in English. We are once again going to be focusing on the British English way of expressing these Japanese phrases and also looking at ways which are perhaps not direct translations but are really natural ways of expressing the same sentiment, the same feeling, the same nuance. So I really hope that this video can help you, whether you're interested to learn English or Japanese. Before we get into the very first phrase, thank you very much for visiting this channel and for learning British English with me. So let's get started. The first useful phrase is Mendoci. Now, Mendoci means I can't be bothered. You don't really want to, you don't have the full energy. Perhaps you've had a very lazy weekend and when you wake up on Monday morning, you feel, oh, Mendoci, I can't be bothered. Another word which is extremely useful and can be heard everywhere you go in Japan is yoroshiku onegaishimasu. This basically means please treat me kindly, although in English we would never really say that to someone. Instead, we would express a gratitude to meet someone by firstly saying nice to meet you, or I'm looking forward to working with you, seeing you again, hanging out with you. It depends on the context. So I'm afraid this one does not have a direct translation, but for anyone coming to Japan, it's a very useful, polite phrase to know. Another phrase which is used very often here in Japan is Otsukare. Otsukare-sama deshita. It's a way of closing a conversation or a project working together. It's a way of saying, good job, I recognize your efforts, well done. So perhaps at the end of a lesson with a student, they've worked hard, and I say, good job, or well done, Otsukare-sama. In Japan, Otsukare can also be used to signal that your job has finished. So when you're about to leave the office, you say to the people who are still there, Otsukare-sama deshita, Otsukare. I've finished and I'm leaving, but I recognize that you're still working. So in this situation, in English, we would simply say, okay, I'm off or I'm leaving, see you next time. It's a little recognition rather than just leaving. Another phrase that is used in Japan is zannen. In British English, we are going to say, what a shame. It's a way of signifying when something doesn't quite happen the way that you want it to. Zannen, what a shame. I'll talk more about the useful phrase, what a something, in another video, but what a shame, what a surprise. It's just a really useful British English term to express an emotion or a feeling. Another term that is often used more in the homes in Japan is Ojimashimasu. The direct translation means I am going to bother you. I'm coming into your house and I'm going to be here for a while. We wouldn't say that in English. The direct translation doesn't make sense and doesn't have the same nuance. Instead, we would simply show recognition by perhaps bringing a little gift and saying, thank you for having me. Thank you for having me is something that we would say when we arrive and also when we leave. So in Japan, it's Ojimashimasu when we arrive or Ojimashimashita when we leave. The indirect English translation would be, thank you for having me. This phrase is used around food. As we sit down for a meal, before we pick up our chopsticks, we say, Itadakimasu. Itadakimasu is basically recognition for the efforts that have been made for the meal that has been prepared, for the animals or plants that have been put on your plate. It's not exactly a prayer, but it's a moment of gratitude and recognition for the dish in front of you. Again, this is not something that we have a direct translation for in English, but I would say the best way to signal this recognition would either be to say, wow, this looks delicious, to compliment the meal, or stealing from the French, bon appétit. Bon appétit actually means enjoy or have a good appetite, but it's the same nuance. It's a moment of just saying, wow, yum, I'm grateful and I'm ready to dig in, let's go. There is no direct translation, but I would say that saying, wow, this looks delicious, or bon appétit is probably the closest equivalent to Itadakimasu. When you've finished your delicious meal, in Japan, you're going to say Gochisou sama deshita. This is a signal to the waiters or the chefs or to anyone that has prepared your meal that the meal was delicious and again, you're grateful for what you have consumed. In English, again, we don't have a set phrase, but it is very polite to signal that the meal was enjoyed and to show some gratitude to the person who has spent time preparing this dish. The best way to express this in British English can just be something as simple as that was very delicious or that was so delicious, thank you very much. It's also quite polite in the UK to compliment the meal at some point throughout the meal. So perhaps after your first bite, you might want to say, oh, it's delicious, or wow, this flavor is really good. Perhaps you could ask a question about the dish or the recipe, but basically just saying, wow, this is delicious is probably enough. At some point during the meal or after, wow, this is delicious, or afterwards, wow, that was delicious. Kawaiso. This is when you see someone who just misses the train and instead has to walk home in the pouring rain and freezing cold and looks very, very sad. The first feeling might be kawaiso. And in English, we would say, I feel sorry for, or poor thing. So when I see this person very cold and soaking wet, I'd say, oh, poor thing. Poor can relate to a lack of money, but in this situation, it's different. Poor thing, it means I feel for you and I'm showing my emotion for you. Similarly, I feel sorry for someone, or I feel sorry for her. She's walking home, she's wet, she's cold. My heart goes out to her. I feel sorry for her. Kawaiso. On a slightly more positive note, Sugoi. If you really want to have a go at British English, something like brilliant or fantastic is a really great way of expressing Sugoi. And the last phrase in this lesson today is Yokata. It means, I'm glad. It's such a relief. Those are two ways of expressing Yokata in English. I'm glad, or it's such a relief. I'm glad is more used when someone responds positively. So if you give someone a gift and they say, oh, I love it, you could say, oh, I'm glad. It's kind of like I'm happy about that. Whereas I'm relieved is more if you're nervous that something is not going to work and then it does, oh, I'm so relieved, or I'm relieved. For example, you're ringing your friend again and again and there's no response. You start to worry, are they okay? And then they call you back and they say, I'm totally fine. Oh, I'm so relieved, you could say. Thank you so much for learning British English with me today. Please comment in the comment section below about anything that you want to see on this channel, and I will happily make a video to help you with your British English. Thank you again, and until next time, bye-bye.